Welcome to our post-webinar Q&A segment and training update from ITC here on Facebook and YouTube. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions from yesterday's tutorial on how to create a report with FLIR Thermal Studio using the comments field below. Before we start, just wanted to remind everyone where you can find a list of upcoming training classes from the Infrared Training Center. Our 2020 calendar with dates and locations in the US and Canada is available online at infraredtraining.com/schedule. And for our fellow thermographers that are based in Europe, the Middle East, or Africa, irtraining.eu is where you'll find a list of classes in your region. All right, before we get to the questions from yesterday, I wanted to first chat with Jason here just for a bit about Thermal Studio and how it fits into the mix with the other processing software from FLIR. So what's that all about?
Thermal Studio is the latest advanced software for image processing, both still images and sequences, MPEG videos, and for creating inspection reports. So right now there's sort of three tiers of software. There's FLIR Tools, which is still available. That's free software just for basic image editing and basic reporting, no template editing or anything like that. There's Thermal Studio Starter and Thermal Studio Pro. And I'll explain the differences here in just a minute as we go through the presentation. Just generally speaking, and this sort of applies to both Starter and Pro, with Thermal Studio, you can analyze your thermal images, which means that you can measure temperatures. You have a set of measurement tools available, spot meters, areas, lines, that you can use. You can apply that to your images, you can change palettes, you can adjust your scale. So a lot of the things that you can do in FLIR Tools and other software you can do with Thermal Studio. So you have a full set of tools available. You can also process radiometric sequences. We have a couple of different formats. CSQ is used in some of the cameras. SEQ is used in the software. So FLIR Tools Plus, for example, can record SEQs, sequence files. So in Thermal Studio, you can process those as well. You can edit MPEG videos. This is something that we never really had before in Tools and Tools Plus. The editing features are relatively basic, but you do have the ability to import an MPEG from, say, a GF320. You can play it back in Thermal Studio and you can see the GPS coordinates, which is a cool feature. You can create custom templates. Again, going back to the comparison, FLIR Tools has no template building capabilities. In Thermal Studio, both Starter and Pro, you can create your own custom templates and reports. And you can create batch jobs. This is another unique feature of Thermal Studio that we never had with Tools or Tools Plus. So this is meant for processing a large number of images all at the same time. So if you wanted to, say, apply the same color palette, you could do that using the batch functions. And then finally, the live imaging. So a lot of our cameras stream live video over USB. And FLIR Tools could connect live. This can also connect live. And with the Pro version, you can record sequences. We get a lot of questions about this. We've been using Word for a long time to create templates with Tools Plus, with the old Reporter software. They were all Word-based. It was a plug-in for Word. This is a standalone program, so there's no dependence on Office. You don't need Word. It's its own program. There are two versions, which I've mentioned. There's a Pro and a Starter. There is a demo version available. It's a fully functional demo version. But until you buy a license, you'll see a watermark on all of the images. Reports, because it's a standalone program, they're saved in a unique format, but they can be exported to PDF and XPS, which are both very common formats. And it is downloadable from FLIR.com. If you go into the industrial section of the website, you should be able to see the software section there and download a trial version, and you can also buy the license at that same location.
Okay, great, because that's one of the questions we had from JR yesterday was how do you download Thermal Studio Pro? If people already have, let's say, FLIR Tools Plus, is
Yeah.
that something where they'll just download it and it'll automatically upgrade that?
No,
Or it's a new program separate
it's
from
a
that?
completely new program.
Okay.
And there are no discounts available for Tools Plus
Okay.
users. So if you're considering other software, Tools Plus is technically still available, but I would not at this point buy that license.
Okay.
I would lean more towards Thermal Studio.
Okay.
Either Starter or Pro.
Okay.
Yep. Now the versions, this is just a real kind of brief breakdown of some of the key differences between the Starter and the Pro version. And that's exactly what this is. This is Starter features compared to Pro. Starter has other features, but this is more of kind of what you don't have in Starter when you compare it to Pro. So from the reporting side, you're limited to a maximum of 5 custom templates. You don't have a profile graph, there is no histogram graph, and there are no formulas. But Starter allows you to create templates. It may work fine for you unless you need these specific features. There is no magic wand feature in the image editor. The batch functions are limited to what's listed here. If you've looked at the features or tried the demo for Pro, you've probably noticed there are a ton of batch functions that you can combine. It's a very versatile tool. With Starter, this is what you have basically, so it is fairly limited. There is no recording with Starter. You can connect live, you can view a live image, you just can't record any of those sequence files. And there are no plugins with Starter. So that's something that's going to be developed over time for Pro. They're going to have add-ins. There is a routing plugin that's available, and those require the Pro version. Okay, so if you're considering that, you might want to lean towards Pro. And the licensing options. Traditionally, we've had what we call a perpetual license. So when you buy a Tools Plus license, it's a one-time purchase, it'll work forever. What's new here is the subscription option. So I'll try to break these down real quick. The perpetual license applies to the Starter version. There's no subscription version for that. So if you buy that license, that's it. It's just a one-time license. You don't have to, re-up the license or anything like that. The Pro version is offered as a subscription. This is a yearly purchase. It has to be renewed every year. Internet connection is required to verify that you have that subscription. The subscription will receive updates and upgrades. So if like a new feature comes out, you'll get that as part of the subscription. The perpetual license does not receive any of those upgrades. You'll get updates and bug fixes, but if a new, major new release comes out, you won't get that automatically. The Pro version, like I said, it has to connect to the internet periodically just to verify that license. So you have to have a connection. If you're completely standalone, you have no way to connect to the internet, which is the case sometimes, you might want to look at going with the perpetual license for Pro. Another thing too, if you don't renew your license for Pro, it will downgrade, so to speak, to Starter. So it'll still work, but you will lose the Pro features unless you re-up the subscription. Okay.
All right.
So just a brief overview of some of the options there with the Starter versus the Pro.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. We had Nathan was asking, he was on yesterday, when creating a report, he noticed it produced a non-thermal image of the item, which was photographed. Is there a special setting in the camera? I guess, well, we know that the cameras take both thermal and visuals.
Yep.
I don't, is there...
Well, most cameras nowadays have the visual picture.
Yeah.
It's built in. It's part of the JPEG.
No way to shut it off or anything like that.
It depends on the camera model. Most of them nowadays, it's there all the time. Some of the newer cameras, there was some talk of adding the ability to turn that off. It really, really depends on the camera model.
Okay.
Something you'd probably want to check with the FLIR support on, just they can probably give you some more specific guidance on that.
Okay.
We have had the ability to store a matching photo for a long time. I mean, this is going back 10, 15 years. But it was typically a separate picture. You'd have 2 JPEGs. Several years ago, to facilitate the image fusion, they combined them into just a single JPEG. So if you look at this JPEG in your Windows Explorer, you would just see the thermal part, but the visual part's built right in. So it's here, it shows it in our software, but you wouldn't really see it in other, like photograph software or anything like that.
Okay.
So you can design a template without the visual box, you know. So if you had an image like this with the photo, if it's always there, if you didn't care about that on your reports, you could just build a template without that photo, you know. So that'd work fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, to wrap up, we had one more question. Several were asking about if you could explain the magic wand feature. I know that's, I believe it's new, right? And some of the other analysis tools, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. The magic wand is new. This is sort of a automatic polygon, if you want to call it that. It automatically selects a region of temperatures within a certain user-defined tolerance. So, for example, looking at these cups, so we have some cold water here, some hot water here. If you wanted to select this region of the cup, you could do it manually with an ellipse or rectangle and just drag that across, you know, size it. But you would have to define that area yourself. With the magic wand, I can select it and point in this area, and it automatically selects all the pixels within a tolerance that you can set over here using this slider. So if you narrow, or not narrow, but slide it to the left here, it lowers that tolerance. You can see that on the image. If you slide it to the right, it widens it. So it selects a wider range of temperatures, it's a wider tolerance. So you have full control over that. And depending on the image, this image, it works well because we have a distinct difference between the top of the cup and the bottom. So it really depends on the type of image that you have, the temperature distribution of the image, whether or not it's beneficial. But it's kind of a cool feature. We've never had this before. Polygons, you've always had to draw manually.
Yeah, I like it.
It's pretty cool. And you can always adjust these points too. So you can start with the magic wand and then just kind of fine tune it yourself if you want to. The other tools are pretty standard. We've had them for a long time. We have spot meter, single point measurements. We have a line. The line, this is kind of neat too. If you wanted to see a profile, you can do that right in the image editor without creating a report. With FLIR tools, we didn't have that in the editor, in the image editor. You had to have Tools Plus to use a polygon or a profile graph. But this is right within the image editor, and it just puts a graph down at the bottom. You can adjust the color of the graph. There's a little settings menu here. And of course that'll update as we move it around. So we have an ellipse and a rectangle. These are just area, manually defined areas. FLIR Tools has this too. And then we have the manual polygon, which is just a custom shape. So you can trace every time you click a point, it adds a kind of a redirection in the shape, and then just right click when you're done, and there you go. So,
all right.
Yep.
And so these features obviously were covered in the webinar. We'll have the recording up on that here very soon. I think we'll wrap it up with that.
Great.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Jason.
No problem.
And before we go here today, just a quick reminder for the latest news, helpful tips, special training offers. announcements, and a lot more. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube. We're also active on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Of course, our training schedule at infraredtraining.com is where you'll find dates and locations for the courses in the US and Canada. And if you're in Europe, the Middle East, or Africa, irtraining.eu is where you'll find a list of courses in your region. And finally, just want to remind everyone, we've got 2 more webinars coming up in February, IR in the auto industry, and another one, IR and HVAC basics. That'll be on February 13th and 14th. For more information on those, you can go register online at infraredtraining.com/webinars. All right, thank you for watching today's post-webinar Q&A session, and we'll see you online again soon. Have a great weekend.